Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. Once again, we are coming to you live from the 2015 PMI Global Congress at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And with me right now here in the hallways is Peter Monkhouse. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Cornelius. Pleased to be here. Pleased to be talking to your audience today.
Yes, you are a competitor of mine tomorrow morning because we'll both be speaking at the same time. Your topic is My Project is Failing. It is not my fault. Before we get into that, Peter, what is the big trend that you see for project management in the coming year?
I didn't realize we were speaking at the same time. Can I come to your session?
And I'll come to yours.
Oh, you come to mine?
Let's see what happens.
Exactly. Project management is a wonderful field, Cornelius. There's so much going on in the field. It's so many things of interest. The growth of people practicing project management, the growth in research and so on is just wonderful. But I think that what PMI has started this year with introducing the new talent triangle and the focus on business and strategic management that's going to really start taking off. And that's going to be much more visible, and it's going to continue for a few years, that as project managers, we're going to be having to understand business better than what we do. And this is why I'm doing this paper, to share some of my experiences that I've had. I think I want to lose count of the number of years I've worked in the private sector and the not-for-profit sector, of the importance for us as project managers to understand why our project's being done. Why is this the right project for the organization to do right now? And I think it's very important that as project managers we understand that and we know the signs of how to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Is there any particular reason why you chose this topic, focusing on failing projects?
Well, actually, the topic's not so much on failing projects, because
how to avoid it, I guess.
It's more about how to avoid failing projects. I mean, none of us want to be involved in failing projects. But in my experience of working on projects, being on the PMI board, and talking to project managers all over the world, I just see that we're all struggling with, how do we ensure that our project's going to be successful? But for that is, how do we ensure that this is the most important project our organization can do right now? And that's what I want to talk about. And that's what I want to share with my audience now that I'm off the board and I can share.
So the topic is My Project is Failing. It's not my fault. And obviously I have to ask this. Is it my fault?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I knew
not my fault, your fault.
So you would say if a project is failing, the project manager is largely at fault.
So, we talk about this, and I've actually been at some of the sessions here where there's a discussion about, there's a lot of things that are outside the project manager's control, that prices go up, exchange rates change, suppliers deliver late, that, we view regulations change, that we view these as being external. They're not part of the fault of the project or the project manager. But I think as a profession, as an individual project manager, it's part of our responsibility to look out for these things. There's a rich knowledge area of risk management and so on, to look out for these things, to say that part of our job is to communicate to our project sponsors, to our stakeholders, that these events are going on, and here's what the impact is on the project. Here are some of the options that you can do, right? And to do that, we need to be able to speak their language, be able to know the language of the business. So if we're not doing that, yes, it is our fault, right?
In your presentation and also in your white paper, you then talk about why do projects fail, and there's a long list of various criterias and reasons why projects fail. What is really the number one reason why we see failing projects?
Yeah, so the list I provide in the white paper and I give accreditation to is from PMI's research, right? And the number one reason is communication. It's by far, the research that PMI has done shows this by far being the number one reason why projects fail is poor communications. And it goes on and talks about as well, the second one is the link to strategy and not being able to, not having the strategic support, and then not having clear objectives and clear measures of being the top three. So I think it's important so those are the ones I'm going to focus on in the paper, are those top three, to say, what can you do as a project manager to do a better job with your communication, to make sure your project's linked to strategy, and make sure you know what success is.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier on that there are some factors that are outside of our control. What is in our control?
So, I mean, part of my argument, I think we have to think bigger of what's in our control, right, of what we can do. But certainly as a project manager, that we are looking at how do we build the system, the project plan to get to complete the final product or service of our project. How do we make sure that we have the right resources at the right time doing the right things? But also within our control is how we communicate to our stakeholders, how we ask question of our sponsor, how is this project linked to strategy? Why is this project important to you? Why is it important to our organization to be done now? For us to ask those questions, how are you going to measure my success? Right, to ask that question, that's in our control. The sponsor may say it's on time, on budget, on scope, or it may say about delivering benefits. We have to ask the question. That's in our control. And just taking it for granted, making assumptions that our project is on time, on budget, on scope, is success, is wrong. We have to ask the question. And that's in our control. And that's really what I think I want people to, one of the takeaways I want is to say, don't think so narrowly. Think much broader. Think about much broader about how you're impacting the business.
How do I determine this as a project manager? How do I figure out where does my project fit into the overall strategy of the company? Who do I talk to? What do I ask them?
So, of course, what I like to answer you, well, read the charter. You're laughing, I'm laughing, the audience is laughing.
Probably.
Probably. So the textbook answer is it's in the charter. The reality that I know, you know, and I'm sure everyone listening to us knows is this not in the charter. So I think there's a couple of things we need to do. One is if it's not in the charter, which highly is most likely, then we need to talk to this project sponsor. If we're part of a program, we need to talk to the program manager. If there's a strategic PMO that's doing the allocation of resources and assigning projects, if there's a portfolio manager, we need to talk to them and say, why did you pick this project, right? And get that question answered. Someone in the organization should be able to answer that. Our job as project managers is to find out what that is, update the charter and put it in. You know, you can go further than that. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but many organizations now have large elements of their strategy on their website, their mission and their vision of their strategy. Some of them will even talk about strategic objectives. And maybe you'll be able to find that and be able to figure out why is this project important to do. But you've got to start by talking to the sponsor, the key stakeholders, the clients, the customer to say, why is this important?
And by talking to them and discussing this strategy, am I automatically also addressing the poor communications? Partially, at least partially you are. Now, communications I talk about being in three parts. So there's a method of communication. Are you going to be talking to them? Are you emailing them? Are you phoning them? Are you instant messaging them? We've got so many options right now, right? And we know there's a whole theory around communications and so on, which I get more to in the paper. Then the communication, I talk about what the content is, right? So, you know, if you're saying a message to your stakeholders that my SPI is 0.8, they're going to look at you and say, like, what? I'm a PMP trainer. I always have trouble understanding, is 0.8 good or is 1.2 better? I never know. Right. Right. I probably should use CPI and you know, and consumer price index or something else. Yeah. What? So, you know, that doesn't help. So SPI 0.8 doesn't help. So, okay, so I'm going to say to you, well, we're ahead of schedule. We're ahead of schedule, or we're behind schedule, right? And you're going to say, okay, what does that mean? You're ahead of schedule. Great. So what? And that's the point. It's taking that next step to say, we're ahead of schedule so we can launch our product early and we can realize our business benefits. We can get more revenue. We can start getting our savings. So that's the point about the content of the message, is being able to link it to the strategy and why the project's being done so that you can make that next step to say, good news, Mr. Sponsor, we're ahead of schedule. We're going to be able to deliver early so you can start realizing your benefits early. So be able to give them the consequence, what the impact of the business is of being early or being late, right? And that's what we're not doing. We have our status reports. We say we're 0.8, we're green. So what? And that's the part of the communications I think that we have to work on. And being linked to strategy, knowing what the link to strategy is, knowing how success is measured, means we have a way to communicate back. And then in your paper, you move on to something that is new to me, the business model canvas. What is the business model canvas?
So the business model canvas is actually a relatively new tool. So don't feel too badly,
Thank you. I'm glad.
Cornelius, about being familiar with it. It came out of the Silicon Valley, and it was a tool that was used to help entrepreneurs understand a very simple way to understand their business. And it's got 9 little boxes in it, and think about a left-hand side and a right-hand side. So the one side talks about where the money's coming from. The other side is talking about where the money's going. So the idea behind the business canvas was to get people to think about, as you're running a business, what's your value proposition? Who are your customer segments? We're here in Magic Kingdom and dealing with Walt Disney. And so, their value proposition is about fun, about family entertainment, family time together, right? Their market segment is for people going on vacation from all over the world. Of course, it's kind of weird for us being here at a conference working and you got all these people on vacation around us, right? So, then you got to think about, well, how are you going to get to that market? How are you going to talk to them, right? How are you going to communicate your value proposition to them? Who's going to help you do that? What channels are you going to use? So that gives sort of a sense of how you're going to get money, what money is going to come in. And then on the other side is cost side. So who are your suppliers, who you're working with? What resources do you need, right? What are your key activities? And those will build up your costs. And of course, for any business, profit or not for profit, you want your revenue, your money coming in to be greater than your costs. So I found this as I did my startup, which unfortunately didn't work out, but that's another story. I found this model, and I found it very useful to think about as a framework, not only to think about startups, but for thinking like any organization, as we're just talking about here with Disney World, that as a project manager, you can think about your organization, you can put this model together, and you can ask, project management is about change. So which of these 9 boxes is my project impacting? How's this project going to change the organization to either reduce costs or increase revenue? So how's it impacting it? And if I am impacting, how's that going to impact the value proposition or the customer segment or my suppliers? It gives you another framework to think about the business that you're in, your organization you're in, the business that they're doing, and how your project could impact, and knowing how, again, to talk to your stakeholders about, in their language of the business, to see the impact of their project on their part of the business. Right.
So just to be perfectly clear, you're not saying take the business model canvas and put your project into it and tell me who your key partners are, what your value proposition is on the project, but instead think about how your project is impacting the key partners of your organization, how the value proposition of your business is impacted by your project as it goes live, be it positively or negatively, so that you as the project manager, you get the bigger picture, you get the business side of the project right.
Perfect, Cornelius. I think we should switch. I think you should give my presentation. You got it down cold.
How much do you know about social media and collaboration? You can take over.
Very little.
Okay. All right.
I'll learn as I give your presentation, right? No, but that's exactly it. So this is not about use as a tool to replace a project plan. No, it's about understanding the impact of your project, your product and service of your project. Where is it changing the organization?
Okay. So how do we relate this now back to my project is failing, it's not my fault, the topic of your presentation?
Right. So there's 2 points here. So first is what we have seen, what I have seen, what PMI's research has seen. Projects that are linked to the organization's strategy have a higher chance of success. So if you can understand how your project's linked to the organization's strategy, you're going to be able to be more successful, right? So your project won't be failing. The other thing we've seen is the number one reason why projects fail is poor communications. So if you can communicate in the language of the business, so you can communicate the impact of issues of your project to the business, so you get their attention, so that they can drop everything and support you to resolve that issue, clear that roadblock, get the resources you need, whatever it happens to be. Again, you will improve your chance of success. But if you can't communicate in their language, they don't understand the importance, they don't understand the impact, they're not going to drop everything. They're not going to give you the support you need. Oh yeah, thanks for the update. We'll see you next week. That's not what you want. You want action now. That will improve your chance of success. So by doing these things, your project won't fail, right? And it's not going to be your fault.
All right. How do I get there as a project manager? Our listeners are probably now excited going, you know what? Peter is right. I need to have a better understanding of where it fits into the strategy. I need to talk to our C-level executives differently. What are the steps that they can take today on the already existing ongoing projects in order to start moving into this direction?
So first, of course, is if you don't know what the LinkedIn strategy is, figure it out. If you can't figure out what the LinkedIn strategy is, suggest to your boss that you work on another project. That's a very simple one to do. Ask that question. Try to figure it out. The second thing to do is become more curious about your business, right? And this is why I suggested the business model canvas. Use that as a template to start. There are some great, if you just Google it, you'll find some great resources online about that can explain it a little bit further than doing the paper or this brief chat here. But just think about your business. Who are your customers? What is the value proposition? What are the major suppliers and costs for your organization? Just think about it. And then ask, where does my project impact that? So you can do that today.
All right, perfect. Peter, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure, Cornelius. Thank you, and hopefully we can do this again soon.